In 2013, my mother ended up on the streets. She had lost her mother and her brother, and as many can imagine, this took a massive toll on her. So much so that she called me up one day and she said she was going to move across the United States to start her life over. 3 days later, she called me up. She sold everything she had left on Craigslist. She booked a one-way plane ticket from Oregon to Florida. She flies over there with a suitcase with 2 pairs of interview clothes. Once she gets over there, she thinks her aunt's going to take her in. Her aunt doesn't take her in, so she ends up sleeping on beaches and benches. My mother became homeless. Now, that completely changed my paradigm of how I view and understand homelessness, because she's the hardest working woman I know. I was always the guy that would drive by people on the street and whisper under my breath, "Go get a job." And when she ended up in that situation, it blew my bias up because she has 2 college degrees, she managed restaurants most of her life, and she raised my sister and I primarily by herself. So her ending up in that situation inspired me to do something. So I started calling my local homeless shelters to ask what they needed, and they all said blankets. So I came up with the idea. I was familiar with the one-for-one business model. I came up with the idea that for every blanket that somebody purchases, we'll donate a blanket to that person's local homeless shelter. And I wanted to take the one-for-one model and I wanted to evolve it and make it local, giving anyone in the United States an opportunity to make a difference down the street from where they live. Shared the idea with some close friends, and everybody was saying, "Oh, you should do it." So I did what most people do when they have an incredibly good idea. I did absolutely nothing about it. And I found myself sitting in my car, and my seat's leaned back in all the way, and I'm having one of those "what is the meaning of life" moments. And I felt like the walls were kind of caving in. I was applying for jobs. Nobody's getting back to me. My mom's going through this incredibly difficult time, and I have this blanket idea that I'm not doing anything about. And I'm kind of frozen, and I'm mostly frozen in fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of what's going to happen next. And Shel Silverstein wrote a poem called Fear that goes, "Barnabas Browning was so scared of drowning that he never would swim or get in a boat or take a bath or cross a moat. He would just sit in his room day and night with his door locked tight and his windows nailed down, shaking with fear that a wave might appear, and he cried so many tears that it filled the room and he drowned." You see, it's not the things in which we fear that drown us, it's fear itself. It's not the things in which we fear that actually keep us from pursuing our ideas and our dreams, it's fear itself. So I'm sitting in my car, my seat's leaned back all the way, and my car is filling up with figurative fear tears. And I'm sitting there, and I look up, and my knees are propped up against my steering wheel, and on my knee is resting my coffee cup, and on the coffee sleeve, in big, bold writing, it says, "What are you waiting for?" And my first thought was, what the hell coffee company puts quotes on their sleeves? And my second thought was, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pursue this idea, and I'm going to do this old blanket thing. And my next thought was, I got to pull my phone out and take a photo of this, because one day I'm going to give a TED Talk, and I'm going to blow this photo up on the screen, and I'm going to tell the story that's about to happen. What are you waiting for? So, started my car, drove straight down to Joann's Fabric, because that's what you do when you're starting a blanket company. Drained my savings account, bought a brand new, beautiful Singer sewing machine, and a big roll of black fleece fabric. Pack it home, walk into my house, packing it in, and my wife and her friend are sitting on the couch, and they kind of sit up all startled, and they're kind of like, "What are you doing?" And I'm standing there all proud, like, "Girls, I'm starting a blanket company. And then I realized something. I can't sew. And I found a lady in my community named Tammy, and Tammy started making me blankets. Tammy was making blankets and keeping them in her car, and she's like, I'm already making blankets and keeping them in my car, and I'm passing them out to people on the street. I'm like, hire Tammy, you're my first hire. Welcome to the team. So Tammy started making me blankets. I hired the best photographer that I could in my area, and on June 1st, 2014, sackclothandashes.com goes live. And long story short, after hustling blankets out of my trunk, getting into shops, getting featured on Instagram, building the brand on social media, building out a team, getting a building, we finally reached a point in 2018 where we launched our first major campaign called Blanket the United States. And the goal of the campaign is to donate 1 million blankets to homeless shelters by 2024. And we're going to do that by partnering with people individually who buy a blanket from our website. We'll send a blanket to their local homeless shelter. And we're going to do that by partnering with companies that want to give a blanket as a gift. They can now give a blanket to their employees or their customers and make a difference in their local communities. Now, as we're donating blankets all around the nation to over 500 shelters, I have the privilege to go to homeless shelters all around the nation and do what's called a blanket drop, where we actually go to shelters or men's and women's programs, and not only do we get to pass out blankets, I get to give a message of hope, but most importantly, I get to tour, I get to ask questions, I get to learn about solutions that are happening to solve homelessness. I am very much on a learning journey. You know, I used to be the guy that would judge people not that long ago. I know I'm not the guy that's going to change the issue of homelessness by any means. But my goal is to use my voice and my platform to highlight the people that are changing the issue of homelessness. I'm searching for and looking for solutions. The blankets, although they're a practical need and shelters need them, they're a third-party object that's connecting me with incredible organizations and people all around the nation that I get to learn from. Because solutions are the pathway to a better society. However, we live in a time where the media is so hyper-focused on the issues. We're quick to highlight the next shooting. We're quick to highlight the next natural disaster. We're quick to highlight the next celebrity moral failure. We're not doing a good job of highlighting and using our platforms to promote the people and the organizations that are doing incredible work in our nation. The more that we focus on issues, the more issues we're going to create. The more that we focus on solutions, the better society we create. For example, we'll take a neighborhood in downtown San Francisco known as the Tenderloin. The Tenderloin has a lot of stigmas and opinions about it, but ultimately, just the headlines alone, man struck in the head with a bat in the Tenderloin. Expensive San Francisco still has a place for poor people. As San Francisco homeless stats soar, the city blames big business, residents blame officials. Life on the dirtiest block in San Francisco. Now, how do you guys feel after I read some of those? Are you guys inspired to make a difference? Are you guys excited to go to the Tenderloin and actually do something? Most likely not. Imagine being from the Tenderloin, how you would feel if these are the headlines that are being said about your neighborhood. How would you feel then? Probably hopeless, fearful, angry. But the more that we focus on issues, the more issues we create. But when I think about the Tenderloin in San Francisco, I think of an incredible organization called San Francisco City Impact. They're doing amazing things, and they're showing up every single day for the last 35 years serving the people on the streets in the Tenderloin. They've mobilized thousands of people every year, giving volunteers an opportunity to serve the folks on the street in the Tenderloin. They've created a K through 8 school right dead heart in the center of the Tenderloin. They've also created one of the first child sponsorship programs in the United States. And now for $38 a month, you can sponsor a kid right here in our states, right in the heart of the Tenderloin. And what that $38 does is it helps fund that child's education. It provides them resources. It gives them relationships. And it provides them a safe haven to help set this child up for success in the future. When I think of the Tenderloin, I think of amazing people doing amazing things. I think of hope. The short periods of time that I got to spend with my father, he would always say this phrase under his breath when he'd see something good or positive happening around him. He would say, "That's a good thing." And it was interesting because in the midst of his pain, his problems, his depression, he would always look out, and it was like his way of like seeing these glimpses of beauty and hope all around him, and he'd claim it. He'd say, "That's a good thing." I get asked all the time, "Bob, what do I do? I want to make a difference in my local community. Where do I start?" I always say, start with finding the people and the organizations that are already doing something, that are already creating solutions. And find a way to use your voice or use your platform to promote that, to celebrate that, or even join in on the solution. The alternative is sitting in your car. What are you waiting for? Thank you.